Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. We have something spectacular for today because we have as a special guest, worldwide exclusive, Andy Palmer, which is the former number 2 of Nissan and the former CEO of Aston Martin, and definitely one of the best executives, which are now free to make comments about the car industry, to understand what is going on, and why not to predict some future trends. So thank you very much, Andy, for joining us today, because we want to talk about one of the most interesting, hot topics of the car industry, which is the failed merger between Nissan and Honda. And who else than you can say what happened? And if you allow me, I will start with the first question, which is, hey, what was in the first place to try to make a merger between Nissan and Honda?
There's a lot of history here, as you know, and just for context of your listeners, I worked at Nissan for 23 years, 13 of those years basically based in Japan, and obviously rose up the ranks to become ultimately the chief operating officer. I was in Nissan before its alliance with Renault, and of course after its alliance with Renault, and that alliance is now, to all intents and purposes, dead, as you know, mainly as a result of the fiasco over Carlos Ghosn. Nissan's an interesting company. It's a very proud company. It's a very engineering-based company. It has fragile ego. It believes technically it's the best, and that may be or may be not true. But what it's not good at in particular is business, and in particular at planning and particularly product planning. The role of the alliance, I mean, the alliance did many things. It was ultimately quite fragile, but the thing that it did was it brought strong leadership to particularly the planning aspects of the company. So it was able to leverage the manufacturing capability of Nissan and the technical capability, but it brought in specifically management to look after product and corporate planning. That started with a gentleman that you'll remember, Dan, called Patrick Palata, went on to become the COO of Renault.
Yeah.
It was basically succeeded him was Carlos Tavares. Of course, Carlos Tavares famously then became the CEO of Stellantis. And then it was followed by me. And I'm quite proud to be in that cadre of people that were able to make a very, very strong product lineup. You know, between us, we created the Qashqai, we created the Duke, we created the Titan, we created the Armada, and of course the Leaf, the Nissan Leaf. Who could forget the Nissan Leaf, which I'm proud to say was one of mine. That planning was very much from an international perspective, and it was very much rooted in customer expectations. Now, after I left the company, you started to get the chaos of what was going on with Ghosn, a lot of pressure around becoming more and more financial orientated, more and more short-term orientated, and then the collapse of the alliance. And subsequently, what's happened, I think, is Nissan has not invested in its product portfolio, and it's not been able to meet the customer needs. In the US, it wasn't able to provide suitable hybrid vehicles. In China, it wasn't able to be able to produce suitable electric vehicles. It's lost a lot of ground in its European market, partly because it doesn't have the support of Renault anymore. Now, against that backdrop, they've gone, okay, we're now starting to see financial distress, and you've seen the profit warnings, and you've seen the twice failed turnaround programs that Uchida-san has put forward. So they've scanned the universe of automotive, and they said, so who should we partner with? What should we do? And of course, the first one that came to mind is basically was an approach from a Taiwanese company. Now, I can tell you, I go back to that fragile ego and that sense of national pride. There is no way that Nissan is going to easily let itself be taken over by a Chinese or Taiwanese, or even, generally speaking, a foreign entity. And so you instantaneously get the kickback from that is, okay, but we could get together with Honda. And hence the start of those discussions, probably promoted by MITI, which is the Ministry of Industry, a very powerful body in Japan, saying, you two guys are a bit behind when it comes to electric cars. Why don't you get together? Now, the point is, if you're Honda, why would you want to get together with Nissan that is currently going through a lot of pain and a lot of problems and has a lot of turnaround to do? And from what I understand, Honda said, well, we can get together, but you get together on our terms, not on joint terms. You work for us. Essentially, you merge into Honda and you become a brand. And of course, again, you come back to the pride of Nissan. Remember, Nissan is Tokyo. Nissan's management went to Waseda University or Tokyo University. They regard Honda as their country bumpkin cousins, with not necessarily a great deal of respect. They always, fought to be number two and maybe number one. And the idea that they would be subsumed by Honda would be completely unacceptable to them, as has manifested itself in the breakup of the talks. Now, that leaves you with Honda that will undoubtedly adapt EVs, swallow their pride, move on, and no doubt be successful along with Toyota, and basically wholeheartedly adopt EVs. Sorry, but Nissan has got huge debts coming due. It's got a real cash flow issue, and it doesn't have the muscle. And almost back to that year 2000, almost back to that point where it could easily find itself on the brink again. And that's the dilemma for Uchida and his management team. And they've got to do it now without having any support from the likes of Renault, Honda, or at the moment, as we see it, anybody else.
I was listening to you very carefully, and I still wonder one simple arithmetics, basics. When they started the discussion, was clear stock market value like Honda 5 times bigger than Nissan.
Yeah.
So if you dream as Uchida-san to have a merger between equals, what kind of equals is someone which is 5 times bigger than you? So a simple mathematics, it's showing that you will be at least then, I don't know, 17%, 15% of the company. So what kind of equal? So to me, it was a bit strange how they started, how they believed Uchida-san and his team that they can be equals. They can, it was even obvious for us, myself, yourself, and all the people with enough experience in the history of automotive industry in the last 50 years that in these situations, the weak partner CEO is going immediately out.
Yes.
So how was possible? It's a kind of naive approach from Uchida-san, or?
I think that they were somewhat spoiled. The deal with Renault honestly was sweet. Now, my colleagues, some of my colleagues might not think that the relationship with Renault was good. But the reality was Renault treated Nissan very well. Basically Nissan was on its knees. Renault could easily have just absorbed it and created it as a division of Renault. In fact, that was a lot of the pressure that came on Ghosn later, was basically to consume Nissan. And they didn't do it because they respected the pride of Nissan. Remember, Nissan as a translation is Japanese industries, so the pride of Japan. And Ghosn and Schweitzer, in fact, I give more credit to Schweitzer, understood that. And they did a sweet deal. And I don't know whether you know, Dan, the expression in English of looking a gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah.
This expression of, someone gives you a horse and then you immediately
Yeah,
inspect
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
think that
in
they're
many
telling you.
languages.
Right. This is essentially what happened. That basically, Nissan was saved by Renault. Nissan wasn't consumed by Renault. But then you have this coup d'état, basically, or to bring back the pride of Nissan because you feel Nissan is much better than Renault. And the reality is Renault is not doing too badly right now. Nissan is doing terribly. Actually, who was the weaker of the two partners? The reality is probably Nissan. And I don't think that you get two bites of that cherry. I don't think you get two chances like that. As you say, the next deal is much more likely to be a commercial deal, and it's much more likely to be a takeover. Because let's be honest, the alliance didn't work, and nobody's going to do an alliance with Nissan, having seen basically the coup d'état that took place as a result of it. So the reality is the only way that I think Nissan is going to get saved is basically to be taken over by somebody.
And who might be the likely, the lucky one?
I don't know whether you say it's the lucky one or not. I mean, I look back at the opportunities that Nissan had in the collaboration with Renault, and one moment with a little bit more pragmatism could have landed GM, certainly could have landed Chrysler. This was ahead of Stellantis taking Chrysler. Basically, that the principles that the team was thinking around then of three legs, the US, Europe, and Asia, is very relevant. Truth of the matter, though, truth of the matter is probably, given where we are right now, the most likely group that would be interested in taking over Nissan would probably be Chinese.
Ouch! That's not delivering a good feeling for the egos in Japan, I guess.
No, it would be dreadful. It might be blocked, but remember when the alliance with Renault happened, Mitty in the end wasn't prepared to bail Nissan out. I don't see why it would be different now. If it meant survival of the majority of the people, if it meant the survival of the brand, could it work? I mean, it could work, but yeah, it would be very bad for the ego, but it would also be a consequence of not having embraced the alliance. There's consequences to everything. And I think Nissan's behavior in the alliance was pretty bad, to be honest. The coup d'etat, I don't know whether I can't comment on illegality or not, but there was always sitting behind the alliance. There was always what was called the nuclear button. There was always a desire to break the alliance. And when you do that, the consequences are now you'll find yourself between a rock and a hard place.
So, in the end, what is let's say, the best case scenario for Nissan for now and for the next years?
Best case is, I think, they find a friend. In Japan, one of the most resilient friends is Toyota. And as you know, Toyota has been very good as a bastion of Japan and putting its arms around companies like Suzuki and Daihatsu. So I don't think it's going to happen, but that would perhaps be one solution, which is basically, Japan Inc. comes together and consolidates to some extent, and basically, Nissan continues to be a brand supported by Toyota. That's one possibility. All the pooling of all of all of the technologies, and basically I think Japan has a good chance to catch up. That's the sweetest I could imagine. The most extreme, of course, is they simply go bankrupt. They're allowed to go bankrupt. And the in-between solution is that there's an acquirer, and that acquirer could be, I guess, a technology company. You could imagine that that's something that they could mentally live with, or it could be a Chinese OEM.
It looks like out of all this situation, Honda is going well. They don't care too much about what happened. Is true or not?
Honda is a very resilient company. Look, they've made mistakes. They were late into EVs. They sort of put their money on hydrogen. Hydrogen isn't going anywhere fast. They're in catch up now, but they're a very resilient company, and they do have good management. And I think that they will be fine. I think that they'll continue. Maybe less important than they are today, but there's still a place for a Honda. You're still an aspiration to have a Honda. Their performance in Formula One historically has been very good. So I think Honda will be fine. And, probably for Honda shareholders, not having the Nissan baggage is probably good news.
Probably better. One last question is regarding METI. I imagine the METI people who pushed the merger are a bit upset of the situation. So what can METI do in this situation?
Yeah, one would imagine that they are. I mean, they were obviously working in the best interests of Japanese industry. They are powerful. Nissan is powerful within that framework, obviously the Tokyo connection. But yeah, they'll be pissed. And no doubt looking for other solutions. And I'm sure that they'll be looking to hold probably Uchida-san accountable for not having successfully delivered a turnaround of any sort right now.
By the way, really last question. If they will ask you to become the CEO of Nissan, you will accept that or not? Because you are the most, how you can say, proper person to do that.
I would struggle, I have to say, because back in the alliance days, you could see a way out. You could see what you had to do. And you had the benefit of leveraging the relationship with Renault. Trying to turn around Nissan as Nissan, with its debt pile increasing, with its current product range, with all of the investment that's necessary, it's a mighty hard job. It's a mighty hard job. An interesting challenge. And I love Japan. And by the way, I love Nissan. But I don't see an obvious solution of how you would successfully do that, or how you could guarantee, you'd want to repeat what Ghosn did and turn it around in 2 years. I think it needs more patience than that. And I do honestly think it needs to partnership, collaboration, merger, whatever. It needs help.
Andy, thank you very much for this spectacular discussion about your in-depth analysis of the situation of Nissan. And I'm pretty sure people around the world will highly appreciate your comments. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us.
And always my pleasure.